The alien empire was once the cornerstone of galactic civilization. Their advanced technology powered planets, their fleets protected trade routes, and their wisdom kept peace among the stars. They were admired, feared, and most importantly, relied upon. But the mighty can fall, and fall they did. A plague, swift and deadly, swept through their worlds, decimating their population. At first, there was panic in the galaxy. Diplomats and scientists rushed to their aid, and medical supplies poured in. But when the planet's atmosphere itself began to deteriorate, causing environmental systems to collapse, everything changed. The once helpful races saw only doom. They labeled the Empire a lost cause, beyond saving. Slowly, but decisively, all aid was withdrawn. The galaxy turned its back. Ships that once frequented their space for trade or protection now disappeared. Embassies closed, alliances were severed, and soon the only signals the Empire received were warnings to stay away. Their former allies feared contamination or worse, the collapse of their own economies and worlds should they be drawn too close. A galactic quarantine was enacted, with strict orders that no race was to provide assistance under the threat of serious sanctions. Yet, amidst this abandonment, one race remained unconvinced: humanity. To the galactic powers, they were a young and stubborn species. Despite repeated warnings, humans refused to leave the dying empire to its fate. Something in their nature made them unable to stand by and watch an entire civilization collapse without at least trying to help. At first, it was whispered discussions in human research facilities, scientists and doctors arguing the ethics of abandoning a sentient species to die. Slowly, the whispers turned to action. A decision was made to defy the galactic order, regardless of the consequences. Humanity would go in, even if it meant isolation from the larger galactic community. It wasn't about gaining power or proving superiority. It was about doing the right thing. The first human task force prepared to breach the quarantine. On board were doctors, engineers, and diplomats. It was a small team but handpicked for their skills. They knew the risks. They might contract the plague, they might be shunned from their own people, but they were determined. They believed in saving what could be saved. It wasn't about glory, it was about survival. Not just of one empire, but the moral fiber of the galaxy. When they arrived, they weren't greeted with gratitude. Instead, there was suspicion. The remnants of the alien empire had been burned too many times by empty promises and false hopes. They had lost faith in the galaxy, and humanity, though arriving with aid, was no exception to their mistrust. The atmosphere on the planet was suffocating, both literally and figuratively. The humans stepped into cities once shining and bustling, now hollow and crumbling. Towers that once reached into the sky for trading ships were blackened, and streets once filled with vibrant marketplaces were now empty, haunted by the remnants of a population that had all but vanished. Silence weighed heavily, broken only by the distant whir of failing machinery. The human team immediately got to work. They set up quarantine zones for themselves and the few surviving aliens, cautious but hopeful. Medical personnel began examining the plague's effects. The engineers, meanwhile, tackled the environmental collapse. If they were to save this empire, they would have to stabilize both the people and their planet. Water systems were restored first, then power grids. It was slow work, tedious and dangerous, but bit by bit, signs of life began to reappear. Communication with the aliens remained strained. The humans didn't demand thanks or loyalty. They didn't ask for anything in return. They simply worked, quietly, diligently. And over time, that is what earned them respect. The surviving aliens, despite their deep distrust, began to see humanity as different. They weren't here for conquest, they weren't here to impose superiority. They were here simply because they believed it was the right thing to do. The first signs of progress came slowly. The medical team began administering treatments to the alien survivors, using a mix of human-developed vaccines and experimental drugs. Despite the initial wariness, the results were undeniable. The plague that had ravaged the empire was finally showing signs of slowing. Cases of recovery, though few at first, brought hope to a population that had given up long ago. The human doctors worked tirelessly, with a dedication that the aliens had never seen from the other galactic species. But it wasn't just the medical teams. The engineers proved equally valuable. They faced a monumental task: repairing the planet's failing infrastructure. The first step was re-establishing basic necessities: clean water, electricity, and communication systems. These had been left in ruin, the Empire's vast networks of technology crumbling without the manpower to maintain them. The engineers weren't just fixing broken systems. They were improvising, adapting human technology to bridge the gaps left by the Empire's collapse. Water treatment plants were retrofitted with human components, power grids rerouted to bypass the sections too damaged to repair. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. As days turned into weeks, the humans found themselves in an unexpected position. They weren't just rescuers. They were becoming a vital part of the Empire's survival. The relationship between the humans and the aliens began to shift. Where once there had been suspicion, now there was cooperation. The aliens, slowly regaining their strength, started to help with the repairs. They shared their knowledge of the planet's systems, showing the humans how to operate machinery that had been thought lost. The humans, in turn, trained the aliens in basic survival techniques, teaching them how to keep the systems running long after the humans were gone. There was a growing understanding between the two species, a mutual respect born from hardship. The humans didn't see themselves as saviors, and the aliens didn't view them as intruders anymore. They were partners now, working together for a common goal: survival. The aliens, once proud and self-reliant, now saw the humans as equals, not because of their power or technology, but because of their willingness to stand by them when no one else would. As the partnership deepened, the humans learned more about the Empire's history. They were astonished to discover how much of the galaxy's technological advancements had been influenced by this empire. It became clear just how much had been lost when the other species had abandoned them. The humans were determined not to let that happen again. They knew that the Empire, even in its weakened state, had much to offer the galaxy. And they were committed to making sure the Empire had the chance to rebuild, not just for its own sake, but for the benefit of everyone. One of the engineers, a woman named Harris, made a breakthrough in repairing the planet's atmosphere stabilizers. These massive machines, once responsible for maintaining the planet's climate, had been offline for years, contributing to the environmental collapse. With limited resources and only partial understanding of the alien technology, Harris and her team managed to restart one of the stabilizers. It was a small victory, but it signaled a turning point. The planet itself was starting to heal. Meanwhile, the alien leadership, what little remained of it, began to reassert itself. For years, they had been consumed by despair, their once great civilization reduced to a shadow of its former self. But with the humans' help, they saw the possibility of a future once more. They began to plan, not just for survival, but for the restoration of their empire. And they wanted humanity to be a part of that future. The humans, however, had no interest in colonization or dominance. They made it clear that their mission was to help the Empire stand on its own again. This was not about expanding human influence in the galaxy. It was about giving the Empire a chance to rebuild, to reclaim its place as a leader in the galactic community. As the work continued, the humans and aliens developed a camaraderie that transcended their differences. They shared stories, traded knowledge, and learned from each other. The aliens, once isolated by their own superiority, now saw the value in cooperation and unity. And the humans, once viewed as an insignificant race by the other galactic species, proved that compassion and determination were more powerful than any weapon or fleet. But even as the Empire began to recover, the humans knew their task was far from over. The environmental systems were still fragile, and the plague, though contained, was not yet eradicated. There was still much to do. But for the first time in years, there was hope. The Empire was no longer on the brink of extinction. And it was humanity, a species that the galaxy had long overlooked, that had made it possible. The bond between humans and aliens grew stronger with each passing day. What had started as an act of defiance against the galactic order had become something much greater. It was a partnership, a shared vision for the future. The humans had come to save a dying empire, But in the process, they had gained allies, friends, and a place in the galaxy that no one could take away from them. As the work progressed, the humans began to notice things that didn't quite add up. Harris, the engineer who had helped repair the atmosphere stabilizers, started to dig deeper into the system's failures. What she found was alarming. The initial breakdown wasn't caused solely by neglect or the plague. There were signs of sabotage, deliberate damage to the environmental control systems. These weren't random malfunctions. They were carefully targeted attacks designed to cripple the Empire from within. At first, the humans kept this information to themselves, unsure of what to make of it. But as more anomalies surfaced, it became impossible to ignore. The plague, too, was not entirely natural. The medical team found traces of bioengineering in the virus, indications that it had been artificially modified to become more virulent. It became clear that the collapse of the Empire had been orchestrated. Someone, or perhaps several factions, had wanted the Empire to fall, and they had gone to great lengths to ensure its demise. The humans brought their findings to the remaining alien leadership. The aliens were shocked but not entirely surprised. They had suspected foul play for some time, but without proof, they had been powerless to act. Now, with the evidence provided by the humans, they had a clearer picture of what had happened. The Empire had been betrayed, not just abandoned. This wasn't just a natural disaster or an unfortunate pandemic. It was a calculated act of destruction, carried out by those who stood to gain the most from the Empire's downfall. It didn't take long to uncover the likely culprits. Several of the galaxy's most powerful species had profited enormously from the Empire's collapse. The very races that had once relied on the Empire's technology and protection had turned against it when they saw an opportunity to take its place. They had orchestrated the collapse in secret, using the plague and environmental disasters as cover for their actions. And they had done so with the tacit approval of the Galactic Council, which had stood by and allowed the quarantine to be enforced without question. The revelation sent shockwaves through the human team. They had come to help save a dying empire, but now they found themselves in the middle of a much larger conspiracy. The question was, what were they going to do about it? Humanity had defied the quarantine, risking their place in the galactic community, to do the right thing. But now, they were faced with a moral dilemma far more complex than they had anticipated. Exposing the conspiracy could lead to war, destabilizing the galaxy even further. But remaining silent would mean letting the guilty go unpunished, and allowing the Empire's collapse to remain a victory for those who had orchestrated it. The humans discussed their options in private. Some argued for caution, suggesting that they should focus on rebuilding the Empire and avoid drawing more attention to themselves. Others believed that the truth had to be exposed, no matter the cost. In the end, the decision was made to stand with the Empire. The humans had come this far by doing what was right, not what was easy. They would not back down now. With the help of the alien leadership, the humans began to gather the evidence needed to expose the conspiracy. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. The Empire had been brought to the brink of extinction by treachery and deceit, and the galaxy needed to know the truth. But this wouldn't be an easy fight. The races involved in the conspiracy were powerful, and they had spent years covering their tracks. Even with the evidence, it would be difficult to convince the Galactic Council to take action. Undeterred, the humans pressed forward. They worked closely with the alien leadership, preparing a case that would be impossible to ignore. They knew that bringing the truth to light would come with consequences, but they also knew that it was the only way to truly restore the Empire. The galaxy couldn't be allowed to forget what had been done here. If the Empire was to rise again, it had to do so with the knowledge that justice had been served. As they worked, the humans couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. They had arrived on a dying planet, defying the galaxy's quarantine, with no promise of success. But they had persevered, not just because they wanted to save the Empire, but because they believed in the importance of standing up for what was right. Now they were on the verge of exposing one of the greatest betrayals in galactic history, and they knew that their actions would shape the future of the Empire, and humanity's place in the galaxy, for generations to come. The more they uncovered, the clearer the conspiracy became. The sabotage had been coordinated across multiple fronts, with several races working together to ensure the Empire's downfall. The plague, the environmental collapse, and the abandonment had all been part of a carefully orchestrated plan to weaken the Empire beyond recovery. The humans had arrived just in time to prevent total extinction, but the scars of the betrayal would take much longer to heal. Still, there was hope. The aliens, once despondent and defeated, were beginning to rebuild. And they weren't doing it alone. The partnership between humans and aliens had grown stronger with each passing day, and together they were preparing to face the challenges ahead. The truth would soon be revealed, and when it was, the galaxy would be forced to reckon with its own failures. The humans had not come to conquer or dominate, they had come to help, and now, they would help bring justice to those who had tried to erase an entire civilization. As the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place, the humans and their alien allies prepared to present their case to the Galactic Council. They knew it would be a difficult fight, but they were ready. This was more than just a battle for the Empire, it was a battle for the soul of the galaxy. The humans had stood by the Empire when no one else would, and now they would stand with them in their fight for justice. The day came for the humans and their alien allies to present their findings to the Galactic Council. The council chambers were packed, with representatives from all corners of the galaxy. The races involved in the conspiracy were there too, sitting in the shadows, their expressions unreadable. The air was thick with tension as the human delegation stepped forward. This was not just a formal presentation, it was a confrontation, a moment that could change the course of galactic history. The humans laid out the evidence meticulously. First, they presented the sabotage of the environmental systems, showing how specific components had been tampered with to ensure a gradual collapse. They demonstrated that the damage was too precise to be the result of natural decay or random failure. The alien leadership supported this with detailed records from their own archives, confirming that the systems had been stable before the collapse, and that no external factors like meteors or solar flares could have caused the sudden failure. Next came the proof of bioengineering in the plague. Human scientists had analyzed the virus down to its core and found traces of genetic manipulation. The virus had been designed to spread rapidly and resist treatment, but it had also been engineered to target the alien physiology specifically, leaving other species relatively unaffected. It wasn't just a random mutation, it was a weapon, designed to wipe out the Empire without spreading to the rest of the galaxy. The council chamber was silent as the humans continued. They revealed communications between the conspirators, messages intercepted from secret channels, showing how the races had plotted together. These messages outlined the plan: destabilize the Empire through environmental and biological warfare, then isolate them with the galactic quarantine. The races involved had all profited from the collapse, taking over the Empire's trade routes, mining its resources, and positioning themselves as the new power brokers in the galaxy. The evidence was overwhelming. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some whispering to each other, others remaining stone-faced. The humans knew that this wouldn't be a simple victory. The conspirators had deep influence within the council, and they wouldn't go down without a fight. One by one, the races accused of treachery rose to defend themselves. They denied the charges, claiming that the evidence was fabricated or taken out of context. They argued that the Empire had been collapsing on its own and that the quarantine was a necessary measure to protect the galaxy from further spread of the plague. But their defenses were weak. The evidence was too strong, the proof too clear. The council could no longer ignore the truth. It was then that one of the conspirators, cornered by the weight of the evidence, made a desperate move. They accused humanity of meddling where they didn't belong, of violating galactic laws by breaking the quarantine. They argued that the humans were the real threat, destabilizing the galaxy with their reckless defiance of the Council's orders. They tried to shift the blame, painting humanity as the villains in the story. But the humans were ready for this. They had anticipated the counterattack and had prepared their response. They didn't deny that they had broken the quarantine, that much was true. But they turned the argument on its head. They had defied the Council not out of greed or ambition, but out of a moral duty to save a dying race. They had risked their lives and their standing in the galaxy not for power, but for justice. And now, they stood before the council not to conquer, but to expose the truth. The council deliberated for hours, the tension in the chamber growing with every passing minute. The conspirators, once confident in their ability to manipulate the system, were now sweating under the weight of their own lies. The humans and their alien allies waited in silence, knowing that whatever decision was made, they had done everything they could. Finally, the council returned with their verdict. The conspirators would face justice. They were stripped of their power, their territories reclaimed by the Galactic Council, and reparations ordered to be paid to the Empire. It wasn't the full reckoning the humans had hoped for, but it was a start. The conspirators had been exposed, their plan dismantled, and the Empire was no longer on the brink of extinction. For the humans, the victory was bittersweet. They had come to help, and in the process, they had uncovered a web of deceit that ran deeper than they had ever imagined. They had made powerful enemies, and they knew that their actions would have consequences in the future. But they had also gained powerful allies. The alien empire, once thought dead, was beginning to rebuild. And they were doing so with humanity by their side. The relationship between humans and aliens had grown into something far more than an alliance. It was a bond forged through hardship, trust, and shared purpose. Together, they had faced one of the greatest challenges in the galaxy's history, and together, they had emerged stronger. The Empire, with human support, would rise again, not as the dominant power it once was, but as a new force in the galaxy, one built on cooperation and mutual respect. As the humans prepared to leave the council chambers, the alien leader approached them. There were no grand speeches, no declarations of gratitude. Just a quiet moment of understanding. The humans had done more than save a dying empire, they had changed the course of the galaxy. And in doing so, they had secured humanity's place in it. The galaxy would remember this moment. Not as a victory for one race over another, but as a turning point. The humans had proven that even in the darkest times, there were those who would stand for what was right. They had defied the odds, uncovered the truth, and helped an empire rebuild from the ashes. And they had done it all simply because they believed that no one, no race, no empire, deserved to be left to die.